Welcome to this week's episode of Courageous Leaders Changing the World. I am super excited to have the legend, the master, the Modern Day Alchemist, Rossco Paddison with us today. He's the world's most foremost expert in being Rossco Paddison. Thanks for joining us.
That I am.
So you've got a wealth of history throughout many businesses, throughout investing, throughout startup, throughout all of these things. What's been one of the things that you've really had to face off with in terms of stepping into a new level of courage with all of the experiences that you've had?
That's a good question. Straight into it. Just like deep end. Jump in. Courage. I think when you're young and dumb, courage isn't a big thing, right? I think you got a little insight in this 5 minutes ago. But as you get older, we layer on the layer cake of, shame, guilt, mistakes, excuses, blame, all the things that come with learning experiences. And courage means a lot more as we kind of grow. So I guess for me, I think courage is a journey that's constantly evolving, and courage is kind of like for me it's about it's a courage is kind of like an unfolding chapter of whichever demons you're fighting at the time. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of like how I think about it.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got many experiences of, stepping into that when you've raised millions of dollars for startups, done many different ventures. What's been one of those experiences where you really had to summon all of that courage based on what you were experiencing at that time?
It's probably, it's any time you have the courage to go and do something, and you get a win, and the wins compound, and you accelerate, and you do better than you thought you were ever doing. I remember a particular experience sitting, watching of launching a startup, and it was in crypto land, and the first thing that happened was the token ticker symbol. It started going up, and me as the founder, I'm like in my head doing some quick math, going, oh wow, like if this stays up here and it stabilizes, and I'm like worth how many million? 100 mil? What? And then like 3 minutes later, the chart went. I'm like, and so it's a roller coaster ride that I've been on, because I've been through startup journeys, I've been through raising capital, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 13 years old, and always looking for asymmetric opportunities. And I think it's when you have other people invest in you, whether like thinking about the people on this podcast, like coaches, like even just them having a customer trust them to be their guide through whatever the courageous thing is they're trying to do in their life right now that they need a coach for. You feel a level of expectation upon you, to deliver, to perform, to do these things. Now, obviously as an entrepreneur, you're going to take some asymmetric bets. You're going to ask people to come along for the ride, whether they're a customer, an investor, whatever the stakeholder role there is, that you're going to ask people to engage in, and you're going to lay out the risks. You're going to say it plain. You're going to say it clear. You're going to state it, and sometimes you're going to perform, sometimes you're not. And when you don't perform, even if you laid out everything clearly and you communicated clearly, you're still going to feel like you didn't perform, because that's true. You didn't perform how you wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think this is where courage is required the most. You didn't perform where you wanted to. And that can, if left unchecked, that can turn into almost like a disease, let's call it scarcity, where it just embeds itself into you. And it is infectious. It is not going away until you resolve it, until you have the courage to go again, And yeah, I think that's kind of the essence of it is, if you left unchecked, if you go for it, don't achieve, then left unchecked, that has some sort of compound interest it's doing in the background. And more courage will be required to push again.
Yeah, definitely. When we have to face off with ourselves and we get a result that we didn't necessarily want, then it creates an impact on us, and it means that more is required of us to be able to step in again and again to be able to bring that new level of courage forth with it. So you mentioned there scarcity. Like, how would you define scarcity then?
So scarcity is a problem that happens for everyone in their life. I'll define it in a second, but I just kind of want to lay this distinction out first. So scarcity is a problem that happens for people in their life. And when you solve scarcity, when you solve the problem of scarcity, the outcome is abundance. So abundance is not the opposite of scarcity. It's the outcome when you fix the problem scarcity. The way in which you solve scarcity is actually kind of a simple truth, is creation. Because every time you create something, you're creating evidence, and it's a pile of evidence that accumulates with the more you create, to the point of where scarcity can no longer be true.
Yeah.
And what have you created? An abundance of stuff, like things, value, whatever it might be. So scarcity is a problem. You solve it with creation. And so what is scarcity then? It's just a lack of creating. It's not a lack of stuff, right? People think it's like I've got a lack of money, or I've got a lack of blah. No, you don't have a lack of money. You lack creating value. You lack creating something of value,
Yeah, 100%. And a great example of that is like cryptocurrency. It's just like you've created an entire mechanism of how we can change how we're exchanging value throughout the entire world. That was created. It wasn't just there. It wasn't that we didn't already have that. It's like we've created that. Then that actually starts to create this huge shift in terms of how value is exchanged. That was created. It wasn't something that was already there. The more that we can actually start to come from that place, the more that we can bring that creative energy forth, the more that actually creates more value and creates this perpetuating snowballing effect from it. So I love that distinction of how that plays out with creation as the antidote to scarcity.
Yeah, and like everything was made up. Like we go back to like caveman 101 humanity. Like some guy sat there and one day around the fire and grunted for the first time. Everyone else was like, "Oh, you made that sound. I can do that too." It was like permission to feel something, right?
Yeah.
Everything was made up.
Yeah.
And so like if you had all the money in the world, like all the money in the world, you had access to all the resources, all the abundance in the world, you're still going to want to do stuff with it. You're still going to want to create stuff with it. And the funny thing is I've met billionaires who are infected by the disease scarcity. Actually, I would say 8 or 9 out of 10 are infected by this, call it the Wetiko virus, call it Molech, call it whatever you want. There's this infection in their brain, a mind virus, where they believe there's not enough, even though they're billionaires. I've looked these people in the eyes.
Yeah.
And I would I have sworn to myself, like a soul oath with myself, like enjoyment is more important to me than that. Creation is more important to me than that. Like, and if and when I get there, then I'm getting there from a place of being in integrity with those values, and being on that track. I can't really figure out why I went on that little tangent, but here we are.
That's what the listeners need to hear. So what do you say to people then when they have that experience where they're talking about, well, if they've had this scarcity thing and then they still achieve billionaire status, then why not just do that?
Why not just do what? Sorry.
Just continue on that scarcity paradigm so that we can then get to, billionaire status.
So 80% of billionaires still have scarcity. So why ditch scarcity to get there? Well, because like the type of like, okay, so let me just lay this out. So I've sat down face to face with multiple billionaires, right? And looked them in the eyes, pitched them like stuff I'm doing and had meetings and like in a business context. But in a part of that warm-up rapport process that I'm decent at, because I've sold nearly $1 billion worth of stuff over the years in multiple different contexts and forms, I have had the conversation with them. And in that, rapport building phase, I ask them what's interesting to them. And I get interested in what they're interested in. And I was very curious as to what lights them up, what excites them, like what drives them. They're a billionaire now, like what's important now. And I'd get to a question that was some version of that with them, like what's important to you now. 8 of them, it was like I would punch them in the face and ask them a question that had just made them feel fully seen, because all of a sudden it was obvious to me that they were empty, and hadn't been able to fill this unfillable void. And I remember this one particular gentleman. I was in Shenzhen in China. I'm like, what lights you up? What excites you? And he points out the window and he's like, I built that building, I own that building, I own that building, I own that building. He pointed to like 30 towers. I'm not joking. It's like, that one, that one, that one, that one. And I'm like, and this excites you? He's like, no, I just built the next one. I'm like, do you not understand the question? And it was just like there's a complete disconnect from it for him, because he didn't care. I said, so what do you care about? He's like, oh, party, girls, party. Like, what? Anyway, there's other examples. But what I will say is that, I met a couple of billionaires that were lit up by life, The first one, there was 2 that I remember specifically. The first one was an Indian billionaire, and I was asking him, what lights him up, and he's like, I'm a property developer. That's like where his money come from. And his favorite thing was, and you'll love this, is that every time he's sold a new home, he'd put like a stack of his favorite personal development books in there.
Yeah.
And he was like trying to change culture through this like very tiny novel thing. But he was excited about how it was actually changing cultures, and he was tracking it, and he like had these full metrics as to like how these communities were different from different ones he'd done before based on the books he put in the properties.
Oh, wow.
Like, just like a nerd like us, and he was like, how can I create value that's like asymmetric here, that makes the world the way I want it to be.
Yeah.
Not from a purely avoidant place, but from a towards creative driven, values driven way. So I think the thing is, the 2 that did answer the question to me amazingly inspired the shit out of me. I was like, oh yeah, okay, all right, cool. Yes, there is this version of billionaire status that would be good. I'd enjoy that for my system. Great, cool. Whether I get it or not, I really don't care though now, because I think the primary thing for me is just enjoying the creating. Just enjoying the damn creating, because billionaire is such a weird thing, because after you get past about $30 to $50 million net worth, the experience doesn't change that much. Like fundamentally, you can't spend that much money. You can only fly like so many private flights and business class and holidays and stay in, 4 seasons every night of the year, and spend, it's very hard to spend over $3 to $5 million a year just on living large. And you're just there's a threshold, and it's kind of pointless. So to me, I'm just creating and enjoying the process of creating, way more impactful, way more powerful to focus on that. And then the byproduct, epic money, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Where does there's that one extreme of, the accumulator that just has to keep going and going and going and building all the things. That's like one dimension of it. What about the FOMO dimension of it, the piece of potentially missing out from a place of scarcity? Because this is one of the things that I've been looking at with scarcity. I'm like, there's, for me, scarcity is there's perception of not enoughness. There's a perception of not enoughness internally that becomes reflected externally. When we have that playing out, then we start to experience many things like FOMO. It's like, I'm going to miss out on this thing externally, but then I diminish something that's going on internally. So I'd love your journey with FOMO and scarcity.
Yeah, I think FOMO is an interesting one, because I think FOMO is the desire to get to the outcome without the process in the middle. I think it's the desire to skip over steps and just have the outcome. It's not, I don't think you actually fear missing out. I don't think people actually fear that. I think they just, I kind of flip FOMO on its head. FOMO is a desire to not put the effort in.
Okay.
If you flip it around, right? And it's a disbelief in your ability to create that value without it costing you too much of your own life. So you want to skip over the steps, jump into some sort of FOMO usually shows up in gambling opportunities, right? Whether it's stocks or shares or whatever the investment vehicle is, lots of people gamble through investments, right? Or even with career choices or whatever it might be. FOMO is like, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of like, I imagine if we like put it in a spiritual context for a second. I imagine it's like walking up to the Dalai Lama and like shaking him and going, give me contentment. Do you know what I mean? It's like, what are you doing, dude? You know, like, what are you doing? Like, that's not gonna do the thing.
Yeah.
And that, to me, FOMO is like, you're trying to like skip past the journey. You're trying to find the magic pill. You're trying to jump through the things. So I guess if FOMO stirred in me, which it doesn't very often because I kind of saw it as gambling a considerable amount of time ago. If it stirs in me, first of all, I just notice it. Like if I am like, oh, I want to take a bet on this, I just notice it. And then I kind of get into a bit of self-inquiry and I'm like, okay, what do I think is actually missing here? You know, and you could do the whole DeMartini thing with that and just be like, so where is that showing up already? You know, like you could do the whole mental jujitsu with yourself and do that. But I think just noticing it is actually more powerful. I don't think you need to jujitsu it so much. Like it's just noticing that, oh, I feel like I'm missing something here. That's interesting. That's kind of it. That's like the whole self-inception. You don't need to, you know. Sometimes you don't need more than that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, one of the things is just recognizing there's some level of charge around it so that you can actually come back to your feeling. One of my favorite quotes from Warren Harris is, you know, all fear is the fear of feeling. And, you know, if we're in FOMO, the fear of missing out, then we're just not feeling something internally, which is being reflected back externally in our reality. And if we can actually just go back internally to the feeling, then it just starts to alchemize, right? Especially the modern day alchemist.
I love that quote. That's cool. I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah, it's like the quote that I do the most as well. Just because it's so accurate. We get into this experience of, you know, fear, which is future negative. It's like, well, you know, it just means that we're not in the present. We're not actually in our body. We're disassociating. We're going into our head to be able to create a perceived level of safety to avoid the uncertainty in our system. So the more that we can actually start to recognize that, and especially when it comes up in the context of scarcity, of like this perception that there's not enough externally, which is typically coming from something internally, then we can actually just start to journey it and return to ourselves, return to the feedback that our body's giving us. So what's the piece that you start to see in terms of when people are really starting to, you know, face off with their courage and all of the underlying shame that kind of comes up around any failures that they've had in business that has them stopping themselves stepping into creating the next thing?
I'm battling with this demon right now. I think I shared with you before. So the way I'm battling with it is, you know, like the recency for me is, it's a few years ago. It's not like recency in like the last few months, but a few years ago, I had a pretty big like run at a startup, and it had multiple catastrophic things happen. Like we, you know, raised millions of dollars. We spent, you know, $1 million building the thing, and then the underlying technology got changed. So then we built it again for the next underlying technology, which then got changed because we were working in emerging tech. And we were about like literally a year and a half too early because now all that tech's stabilized. I'm like, fuck. And then beyond that, so then we got it finally built on one of these technologies that stabilized. And then a different piece of tech, which was a stable coin that we were using, got hacked. So basically we finally built the thing, got it stabilized, and then it had the guts ripped out of it. And I was like, it's just like, so you know how you get arrows in the back as a leader? I had like arrow, whale harpoon. And it's just like, So I'm like rebuilding from that in my psyche, you know, still to this day. And I will go again. I'm not sure exactly what that form is going to take right now. Right now, the process for me is writing this book, really understanding the principles, really distilling the lessons so that as I face this next thing, certain distinctions that I got, like for example, I'm going to come back a little bit from the edge of emerging tech. I'll still play with technology, but I'm going to come back a little bit, like know the safe zone of what's stabilized versus volatile.
Yeah.
And that's like a distinction for myself personally. But beyond that, there's these set of timeless principles that I kind of work out. Like, I mean, you and everyone listening to this, you know, we know that you kind of build this stack of skills in your life, but you also build this stack of principles as you get older. Like the maturity ends up being principles, less so skills, you know? Yeah. And the principles I've collected for myself now, I have like, I'm starting to get to the point of where I'm like feeling, you know, the cockiness you feel when you're a teenager. You're like, oh, I can fucking do that. I'm starting to feel the edge of that, so I know something's coming through.
Yeah.
But I think this is it for me. Like, if I think about it as a wheel, courage for me has to be triggered by these 3 steps. What is it that I would enjoy to do? That's step 1.
Yeah.
Do that. Step 2. Step 3, what did I learn from that?
Yeah.
And just cycle through those things. Now, if you've had catastrophic failure, you need to zoom that right into something small and then compound interest, make it bigger, you know? So tackle something small. I tackled a book, not small. Especially when you care about it. Damn, if I didn't want to be like a 4-hour bestseller. Sorry, I'm not like paying anyone out who does that, but I'm like, that is not my journey with this. Like, I wanted to create a book that I was like, could give to my children and be like, hey, Daddy wrote down some principles that I think are pretty timeless for future generations, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm not slaying on Amazon bestsellers. Good marketing. The point I'm making though is that choose something small, you know, and then with the small, something bigger. Get momentum. You know, courage and proof that scarcity doesn't exist in your life just happens from like creating over and over and again. And for me, it's just like, what would I enjoy creating? Do that. You know, what did I learn from that? Okay, now what would I create that I would enjoy? You know, like, do that. What did I learn? You know, and just build that little flywheel.
Yeah.
You know, over and over and over again. And it can be so tiny. You can do it like, you can do that with like a tweet, you know, a day. It's not about it having to be some overwhelming, all-consuming thing to build upon, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the things that kind of is obvious when it comes to technology and AI and, you know, cryptocurrency is creating all these feedback loops, but the majority of people, the majority of society don't really understand that. They don't actually create feedback loops. And one of the things that plays out in creating flow, there's like kind of four principles, and feedback loop is one of those. If you've got a feedback loop, then you can actually start to go, okay, cool, what did I learn?
Yeah.
Every single event that I run, I have a sheet that I fill out and I go, okay, cool, what worked, what didn't work, what are we changing?
Yeah.
And just in that, what that means is every single event gets better.
Yeah.
But most people live their entire life, they're not actually creating that feedback loop, they're not actually creating those changes. Then they're looking at the learnings, but they go into a personal development room to get the learnings, but then they don't actually then review how they went in the personal development room. They're actually going, oh, well, how did I show up? How did I actually start to implement those learnings out in the world? And you know, it's such a, even just that tiny principle has created so much of a shift in my life, and it's probably the one thing that, you know, most people that I see don't do.
Yeah.
Is that one of the principles in the book?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that's definitely a concept. It's I wouldn't say it's like one of the cornerstone principles, but it's a concept that we lay out in the pre-frames. I think the cornerstone piece for me though is like a problem can't exist without the information to solve it inside of it.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot have a problem that you are facing in like a coaching business, for example, right? Like, say cash flow is the problem. You do not have that problem without the answer lying inside the problem. Now, I think the first thing that people don't do, just like first feedback loop, like first principles of a feedback loop, is a lot of times, and I think this is prevalent in the coaching space, is the first thing that we do is we go, what do I want? What's wrong? What's the gap? Let's try and fix the gap, right? So they do some sort of gap analysis, some sort of root cause analysis, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's very shallow, too fast,
Yep.
Usually done on a sales call.
Yep.
Not actually done in a holistic way.
Yep.
You know, not a deep dive, right? You know, all of these things, preaching choir, you know, but the feedback is, does this sound good enough for them to hand over their credit card and buy my shit? Like, that's the flywheel of that feedback. Yeah. And so the client gets the feedback they need in that moment, but they don't actually get down into it.
Yeah.
And so I think the best thing you can do is dig into the problem so much that you start to find very obvious answers to the solution, but keep going.
Yeah.
And non-obvious answers start bubbling up.
Yeah.
When you get to non-obvious answers, you're starting to get there.
Yeah.
I would say you're 40% of the way there
yeah.
when you get to non-obvious answers start bubbling up.
Yeah.
And keep going and refine. And a problem statement, I think, for me, like, up to 2 pages, maybe half a page, but every single word is worth $1 million to you, right? So if you want to solve something for yourself, start with the feedback loop. Like, define this problem down to like a holistic paragraph or 2 or 2 pages, like somewhere between 2 paragraphs and 2 pages. And every single word must be perfect. You must agree with every single word on both those paragraphs or pages.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, you've started with the learnings you've had of old to begin the next thing, you know, like to actually define it. And the coaching world isn't taught how to problem define and product scope and like think about building and creating solutions. Like, they're not taught to build and create solutions, you know. I think more coaches need to go to instructional design school and actually learn how to build things that help more people get through the outcomes by doing the actions, rather than getting them through everything they need to know, or shoving more information down their throat, or overwhelming their clients and wondering why they're getting complaints, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely recognize that's been, you know, a journey for me throughout my coaching career. It's like, you know, they need to know all of these different things. And then I'm just like, you know, if they're not moving, then it doesn't matter how much they know. It's like, get them moving, and then we can actually just adjust and give them small pieces. And if we can get them into that motion, into that action, then we're going to get so much better results than having them know everything they perceivably need to know to do it. And, you know, I think that comes from, you know, so many people in the coaching industry are, you know, people who pride themselves as being people who, you know, over deliver on things, and often it's not they're over delivering, they're over teaching.
Yeah. And I mean, you're placating to the good boy, bad boy, good girl, bad girl culture.
Yeah.
You know, you're going, oh, you're a good girl, you understand all the knowledge we just taught, you know, like, tick. The dichotomy, of course, though, is that they didn't come to you to get a pat on the back. Yeah. Like, they came to you...
Some of them did, unfortunately, but...
Well,
it's a minority.
Well, I mean...
Just to be clear, some people will come to coaching to get the pat on the back.
I think they will. I think, I mean, this is that whole expectations conversation up front, right?
Yeah.
Because they're going to put expectations on you, you're going to put expectations on them.
Yeah.
You're going to have your engagement process where you try and weed that out as best you can.
Yeah.
Have an onboarding that weed it out as best you can, and then you're still going to get someone who's there for your validation. And yeah, that's just not the business you're in.
Yeah.
You know, which is difficult because they think they're going to feel good. But I mean, the word coach, where did it exist before it existed in the personal development industry? You know, I get images of like swimming coaches and football coaches and shit in my head. And I remember, like, you know, I'm a kid of the 80s, and I remember, you know, my swimming coach, Dennis, he was a douche. But I can swim good because of Dennis. He just threw me in the deep end, literally screaming and kicking. You know, and I learned to swim. Dennis taught me. I hated Dennis. He was a good coach though in that moment, you know, like, and he did the job.
Yeah.
You know, the job was get this kid to swim. Kid swims. Yeah. Maybe could have been done a little less dramatically, but whatever, you know.
Yeah.
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 We've got more polished than that nowadays. But
Yeah. And I think like when we work with people and we're looking at scarcity, we're also looking at that piece of morality at the same time, which is the good boy, good girl kind of complex that plays out there. How do you see that kind of dynamic interweaving with scarcity?
So this is where it crosses over with another thing that I love chatting about: syntropy versus entropy.
Yeah.
So
can you explain that to people?
Yeah. So I mean, basically, entropy. I'm going to give you a metaphor to explain this because it's a really nice metaphor. We can see entropy on planet Earth when we look at monoculture farming. So we see, someone just like cropping cotton like they do in northwestern New South Wales in Australia. And they just like plant rows of cotton and cotton and cotton for hundreds of thousands of acres. That's all there is. And they shape the dirt in a particular way. They pump water out of the ground and they just grow cotton so they can make our clothes and whatnot, right? And it just destroys the ground. Like, because they have to pour all these chemicals and fertilizers and all these things on it to keep it alive because they've killed every other thing in the system to just hold this one thing as the most important. That's entropy.
Yeah.
Right? You're degrading the environment around you to get an outcome. That's extractive. Yeah. Right? Syntropy is the opposite. Syntropy is like, how do we make this ecosystem so vibrant that the cotton can win and so can everything else that wants to come through? And it's creating or adding value to the system. And so when I think about this in a sense, I've got a really good example of this. I don't know why this example's in my head right now, but Mason Taylor?
Yeah.
So a friend of mine owns Superfeast. Mason Taylor, smart dude, smart cat. And I was talking to him, having a chat to him one day, and I was talking about like he has these herbs, mushrooms, like reishi, chaga, all that kind of jam. And I was talking to him about his like early day journeys of like going into the health food stores and like getting, those conversations going.
Yeah.
And he said something really smart to me, and I'm like, this is why this guy is like totally a syntropic thinker. Is he went in there not trying to build Superfeast sales. He went in there trying to build the category. He went in there as a category builder. He was like, let me tell you about why you need these herbs and mushrooms in your shop, generally speaking. He was selling the whole ecosystem. He was increasing the ecosystem awareness. And he does, like, he's definitely the leader in the market here in Australia, and soon to be other places. But everyone's like jumping on and copying something like that because they're like, this is working, like I've got to like try and get my 2 cents out of this process. Yeah. Which is fine. Like the way in which Mason keeps fighting that is by keep building the category. Like defining the world class. Defining the world class makes you world class.
Yeah.
Right? Following best practice and following world class, you're a step behind the eight ball. Like you can actually define it. Yeah. You can use your taste and your judgment, and you can respond to how things are and improve them. And I think that's going to be so fun and easy and playful and alchemy, like with the emergence of AI and everything we're doing with that right now. Like that's like mind-boggling how quickly you can play this role now. How you can paint a vivid picture of where you want things to go. So syntropy to me is entire ecosystems getting better. And when you think about abundance, I think of like a thick, dense piece of rainforest where it has stupidly tall trees that are like hundreds of meters tall, that are ancient, like elders, and then there's lower canopies and vines and this and that, and all the way down to the underground there's mycelial networks and all these things. That's abundance. Like that's nature's version of abundance. And if we learn anything from that, is we all win when we're winning together.
Yeah.
And to me, extractive is win-lose. Creating value is win-win. So thinking like that and think about how can you set the scene so that everyone can win more as a result of how you're doing business.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things I love with this was I was talking to my uncle when I was like maybe in my early 20s, and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty much a grass farmer now. And I'm like, what? I thought you had cattle.
Which, this grass?
Well, I thought you had cattle, mate. I don't get that. He's like, well, if you're running cattle, then, either you're going to buy a lot of hay or you're going to become a grass farmer that creates an entire ecosystem that's basically going to create all of the cattle having something to eat. So he's like, yeah, I'm a grass farmer. And I'm like, okay, that's a different way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And that plays out so much for, especially in the coaching context. So many people are like, right, well, I've got a lead issue. It's like, yeah, I'm looking at the myopic little thing to be able to maximize the number of leads that I get. And we've automatically just destroyed everything rather than look at the entire ecosystem of a business, the ecosystem of the marketplace and everything that's playing out. And how do we actually then add value to that so that we can actually start to, have everyone win? And that paradigm shift that most people have yet to go through is one of the core ones that allows them to be able to, start to actually create, win-win situations rather than just saying that it's win-win.
Totally. Absolutely. I don't know why this sparked this, but there's something I've been playing with and doing a few case studies with just to capture it from my book. And I just know a bunch of coaches, you included, and I've been playing with, in the case studies, a few times it's come up leads being an issue. And so one of the things we've been doing in that is doing some really cool IP unpacking, like really trying to get people's special sauce, essence or magic, bottle it, and then mechanize that essence so that they can produce great outcomes really quickly. And AI powered and prompt engineered and all that kind of stuff at the end, and build a workflow so it can be automated and build bots and all that kind of stuff is all doable. But without any of that jargon, essentially what we've been doing is looking for how can we create the most value the quickest. And coaches for the last 2-3 decades, it's been a lead magnet. That's what it's been. It's been a lead magnet. And I think we're about to go through a transition from lead magnet to lead service. And they're going to be mini services that can be created by bots, by AI, prompt engineered, instructional design, like curated, crafted moments that you design for people to have an experience with you at arm's length, at leverage. And I think there's some exceptional things we could chat about there for your audience, but a couple of examples. One person, mutual friend of ours, she does a bunch of work with shadow readings and stuff like that. We jammed on creating a way where she can scale and leverage it so that she can give that thing away for free to get someone to opt in to get like a V1, and then she can sell the V2 experience and upgrade from there. So it's like give them the first 30 days for free at leverage at scale, and then upgrade them to move on. And it might be shorter than 30 days, it might be the first 2 days. But it's that same whole experience, like challenges, for example. That now is really interesting. The idea of micro challenges, one-to-one chats at scale, like being able to do, like, how we've had like coaches have seen a bajillion coaching challenges. When join my Facebook group, we'll do a boot camp and we'll do blah for blah days. Yeah, the ones. Now you'll be able to do that one-to-one in chat, where you're like, they have the experience that you're checking in at scale, but it's obviously mechanized and you've got support through that. Or you can just be like, hey, do this today. Let me know if you have any questions. And then, of course, you've preempted those questions and engineered responses that are helpful and little Loom recordings here and here to help them get over those things. And you build like a decision tree of an experience that they might go through. And you can help them get a result. You can help them get a quick win now without you having to do it with your time every time. What you have to do though is you have to engineer, you have to craft that moment. You have to engineer a win for them to do that service that people experience as a lead magnet,
Yeah, definitely. Do you find that that's, kind of paving the way out of the information age then? Because, previously it's like, here, you get the information and you can go and apply. You go get this guide or whatever it is, you can get the thing, and then now it's becoming more of a...
Do it right now.
Yeah, a service, as you say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's the old DIY, do it with you, do it for you.
Yeah.
This is do it with you is the sweet spot, because they get competence and outcome.
Yeah.
And that's what people do want. They do actually want competence and outcome.
Yeah.
And I think the most interesting, like if we fast forward 5-10 years into the future right now, we've all got Optimus bots, like everything's done for us. Maybe not 5-10 years, maybe 20 years in the future, everything's done for us. You literally don't have to wipe your ass if you don't want to. Like, someone could do that for you. A bot.
Someone.
We're
going back to slavery.
You might have given it a name. It might identify as a person. But like, you get to this future, and it's not ridiculous to conceive that anything you don't want to do, you don't have to do. And then you'll only do the things you want to do for the sake of learning or insight or creativity, or like, we're going to that point. We're going to an age of alchemy, a renaissance of creativity and curiosity, and like a beautiful place. I actually am a very big pragmatic optimist. I think we're going in a good direction. And what will happen then, like coaching 20 years from now, I think we'll be done with you. Like, I think that's where we end up ultimately, is the experience of done with you. Like, I want to learn how to do this thing, you know? Maybe it's like, this is an extreme circumstance, right? But I saw this really cool thing. So I went to a lot of tech conferences like over the last 8 years. And I went to this one, and they were showing a VR example of a GP being shown how to do brain surgery on someone who lived in a rural area and there was no surgeon there. So like, a brain surgeon jumps on one end of the phone with a VR machine, attaches it to like a medical practitioner who's got no fucking idea what they're doing, really practically on the task.
Yeah.
And the brain surgeon's going, okay, this little ventricle here, go down this, like a drawing on the screen in the GP's eyes, and go down here, and we're going to make this incision here, and we're going to do this. And I saw a demo of this tech, and I'm like, oh dang.
Yeah.
We're going to be able, like, we're going to have like matrix level powers, and we're going to be able to learn to do anything.
Yeah.
But the teachers, the coaches, the sages, the wisdom keepers are going to be the guides, the hospitality crew, the servers, taking people through the experiences. It's going to be an experience. It's going to be an adventure to do brain surgery on your dog in the desert, because that's where you are and that's what you've got, like, in that moment. Like,
yeah.
That's such a weird example. But you get the point. It's going to be like, that's where I think we're going, is you're going to craft experiences for people. You go for, like, coaching is going to become more about designing moments than it is going to be about, you know, breaking down beliefs and like, changing people's hierarchies of values. No, it's going to be about designing moments.
Yeah.
Like, deeply transformative, resonant experiences, you know? Like, experience design is like prevalent in the future of coaching, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can bring it all the way back to now.
Yeah.
So much automation you can do. There's so much you can create right now, experience-wise.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that, you know, we're in that very interesting point in time where technology is rising so much, and for me, I'm pragmatic about it as well. I think it's going to be a great thing because, you know, all of the meaningless things that we've been doing our entire life, wasting our life away, just dissipate, so that all that we're left with is ourselves. And, you know, for most people, that's terrifying. And for people like us, it's like, finally all the bullshit's gone away, that we can actually finally go internally. We can actually start to, you know, focus on actually working on our evolution rather than doing all the meaningless things that have kept ourselves busy away from it. And, you know, that kind of plays out with, you know, making money. Making money is one of the most spiritual things, because you have every excuse to be able to piss it away and avoid your feelings more than anything else when you've got so much more resources. So when we've got that opportunity, you've got way more opportunity to be able to disassociate, to avoid the things, and at the same time, you've got so much more opportunity for those that choose to be able to go deeper, to actually go deeper. And I think that's what we're really stepping into.
Yeah, totally. I feel like I kind of got blindsided as a child. Like, they gave me the Jetsons. And this felt like, as a 4 to 5 year old, this felt like a promise. It didn't feel like a TV show. And now I've been dry fasting for 30 years, 40 years, since 35 years since then, right? Since I was a 5-year-old. And I've been dry fasting.
Yeah.
Where the heck is my, you know, robots? Like, but it's finally coming. Like, it feels like this really thing. Just to speak to the doom for a moment, because there's this side, right? So there's this other side, is like the doomers around technology. I feel like doomerism about technology, where the world's going, politics. Like I think there's a whole segment of things that touches the coaching industry pretty deeply. Like, you know, like we have some pretty strong worldviews when we want to help people about how we think the world should be.
Yeah.
And I think if we come really back to our center as coaches, we know that we substantiate where we think things are going based on what we want, doing our best, and heading towards what we're focusing on. And I see, unfortunately, a lot of coaches, facilitators, sages, wise people stepping in and out of the political arena. And I've done it myself, you know. And when you talk about AI being doomy or robotics being doomy in the world, you're talking about politics. You're talking about making systemic decisions for humanity. And I think the thing is like pragmatically, the genies are out of the bottle. Robots aren't going back in the box. AI isn't going back in the box. Crypto is not going back in the box. Agri-tech, like farming robots, isn't going back in the box. None of these things are going back in the box. They're not going in the box. Even if there's an EMP tomorrow, and it wipes out all of the electronics on Earth, and there's this big solar flare from the galaxies far, far away, and it all gets wiped out, we still have books with how to rebuild that shit.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going back in the bottle. Like, the genie is out, right? So deal with it. But deal with it pragmatically. Like, okay, what can we do with that? What role can we play as stakeholders, as stewards, as custodians of the world we want to see? And it's not really like bashing the table and going, the world's going to shit, it used to be better yesterday. What kind of coach are you? Like, what kind of coach are you? A tantrum thrower? Like, you're fucking Dennis. Stop throwing kids in the pool like that, Dennis. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, don't be a cranky old Dennis. That's my advice.
Good advice. I think that's like something that plays out, you know, in every industry as well, though. Like people get so attached to how it was that they don't actually step into what's coming, and they often
nostalgia is a form of love.
Yeah.
Nostalgia is love. It's love of things that have passed. It's like, of course you love times that have gone by. Of course you love them.
Yeah.
There were great moments in time. Love that. And you're going to have nostalgia for things yet to come once they pass too.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, if you're feeling nostalgic, you're just feeling love. And if you're processing that by denying it in the future, that seems ridiculous to me. Seems like not useful way to process it.
Yeah. It just comes back to like living in the past then.
Yeah.
And so many people get caught in that. Like they're trying to keep the thing alive. Like, you know, I was definitely caught in that with my mum passing away. I was like trying to keep her alive, trying to do all of these things, trying to be, not even trying to be, just being nostalgic around all of these things. But really all that I'm doing is I'm not actually living my life in that moment. I'm actually just creating this perpetuation of this cycle of me staying emotionally charged, me creating all of these conceptual things in my mind to try and keep something alive that is complete.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what we're talking about is constriction. We're talking about saying something used to be good in the past and now it's less good now, and we're like holding it by the neck and constricting it and not allowing it to be better in the future. Like we're just fucking holding the timeline and clamping down on it and not letting it flow, you know? And it's not that you just need to like let go and surrender all of your everything to your everything. I don't think you should do that from hole to hole. I think it's about, you know, flow start. I don't talk much about flow, but I know you do. For me, flow starts. Sometimes it starts as a drip, then a trickle, then a current, then a stream, then finally an ocean. Like to me, it has stages. And if you notice somewhere where you're being nostalgic or you have constriction or you have these things, then I think you just need to like look for the trickle right now of good things that are showing up that you think you'll be nostalgic about in the future, aka gratitude. Like, but you know, that's the mechanism of it, you know?
Yeah, for me, it's just not being present. It just means that you're just going back to the past. You're trying to recreate the past, not actually present.
Yeah.
When you actually return to the present, Like a great example of this is when people are like, oh, social media is not like it used to be. It's not as easy as it used to be. It's much tougher. It's like, well, no, you're not present to what the current dynamic and the current relationship is with social media and how people are engaging with their phones. You're not present to that. Yeah. Yes, it was different. That doesn't mean it was better or worse. It means that it's created an entirely different dynamic in how we're relating to it. And if you begin to relate to it, how people are relating to it, then it will be easy as it was, as you perceived that it was previously.
Yeah.
So
it's gone through this. It's that I would just have commentary on this, not necessarily insight.
Hit me with it.
It's kind of like media of old, right? We're at the trashy magazine stand phase of social media.
Yeah.
Like now we're at People Mag and OK Mag and who's dating who, and it's just at the at the fuckboy end of the magazine stand, and the drama and oh, Elon's fighting with Kamala now, or whatever the drama is. It's at that stupid end of it,
Yeah.
And I mean, we always knew that media is not where you went for profound, deep insights and principles. You went there to see what is happening now.
Yeah.
And I mean, we know I studied many moons ago, a couple of decades ago, I studied Edward Bernays, went down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And
you sent me through to check out some of his stuff in the past.
Yeah, right. And he's, for people who don't know, he was Sigmund Freud's nephew.
Yeah.
He did a whole bunch of work on publicity, what we now know as publicity, but he actually wrote the book to begin with called Propaganda, and he was figuring out how to manipulate minds en masse. And he's, go down the food chain, and he's, I can't remember the exact bloodline connection, but the guy who runs Netflix is related to Edward Bernays. They've all been taught how to create media empires and keep attention.
Yeah.
And the 4 things in the book Propaganda that keeps attention is fear, greed, guilt, sex.
Yeah.
And that's what you see in these trashy social feeds, because it's what keeps the most attention. And I mean, that's what's there, use it.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's interesting. I've been in this discussion. I actually have a question for you on this.
Great. Use it.
So I've been in this discussion with my partner B. She's just great, deep discussions around integrity and on stuff. And right now I look at a Facebook feed and I think one of the ways to win in Facebook right now is fear hooks. I actually think using a fear hook makes the most sense because it's where the market's at, it's where the feed's at, it's one of those 4 drivers that's going to get attention. And I think a fear hook is going to get more opt-ins, which in turn will help more people to actually move away from said hook. It is using a manipulative technique to get an outcome that is beneficial and actually what the person wants, right? So my question for you off the back of this is, what's your take? Fear hooks, should we as coaches, A, use fear hooks and get as many opt-ins as we can and then do good with it? Or B, should we stay in total integrity and only have towards hooks and work on getting that culture out of social media?
There's 2 paths.
Yeah.
And people who, you're going to choose the game that you're playing. Because if you do fear hooks, then that's going to polarize a certain group of the population. They're not going to be enticed by that. They're going to be turned off by that. The more reactive that someone is, the more they're going to be enticed by a fear hook. The more someone is more intuitive, the more they're going to be turned off by that. So if you're solely going to work with intuitive clients, then that's not going to work very well because they're going to be polarized against that. But if you're someone who is working with more reactive people to get their consciousness evolved, you probably got to play that game. If you're running NLP trainings as an example and you're working with that level of consciousness, then you're probably going to need to start to play that game to be able to get the people in that you're going to work with to evolve them. There's and the key component is you got to really understand the game that you're playing.
Yeah.
Because you can flip it either way to be able to say that's in integrity or out of integrity. Because you can only know what your integrity is if you're using the manipulative technique of actually using the fear hook of where you're coming from and what your intention is behind that. That could be seen as integrity from one point of view, or being the person that is straight line, is full integrity, which is you're doing the thing that you say and you're only ever evolving the level of consciousness of how you work with people and you only create a towards frame of reference. there's arguments for both, and when I look at it, I'm like, okay, you got to look at the game that you're going to play. You can play either game. You can do either of those from integrity, because integrity just becomes another moral frame that we look at of how we start to shame ourselves, and this is one of the main ones that plays out in the coaching industry. It's like, I have to be in integrity. I was talking about it on a call last night. It was like, literally, I think if you haven't been paid for something you've learned, you haven't learned it.
Yeah.
That means that you have to go out and fucking teach the things that you're failing with. Because otherwise you don't get to that level of teaching, you don't actually get to that level. But in the industry, it's like, no, I have to be fully embodied before I can talk about this. It's like, oh, okay, congratulations, you've just missed the last step. Congratulations, you got to a certain level. But how did those people get to embodied? They had to fail. They
I love
had
the
to fuck
word
it up.
embodied. I'm like, are you still an egg or something? Like, so what I heard that you said there that's really interesting to me is what like bubbled as you said that was, you said, who are you helping?
Yeah.
And where are they at in their journey?
Yeah.
Because if like the who is someone that is, you know, you're trying to expand consciousness on the planet, and the who is clear to you, and the where is clear to you, and the where happens to be they're way back stuck in some of these patterns, and fear is where they're at, then meet them where they're at with fear.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Cool. I like that distinction. I think that who, where sort of formula helps. And then in integrity, if you want to stay in integrity, and that to me, the way I do that is just disclaim.
Yeah.
Let's start with a disclaimer. Yeah. Like, hey, kind of know it sucks that I hit you with that question, but I wanted to hit you between the eyeballs to get your attention to ask you this next one. And like, you know, just claim integrity, you know?
Yeah.
If you haven't taught something before, just say, hey, this is the first crew. I'm excited to teach this to you.
Yeah.
Claim it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, I've got a model for it, of course, where, you know...
I just imagine you like in a dark alley with a black long trench coat, and like someone comes up to you to like buy drugs, but it's like, I've got a model for that. You know, like, I'm trying to get really high, man, I want to like feel ecstasy, and you're like, I've got a model for that.
Yeah. The model is, it's like the student teacher paradox.
Yeah.
Like,
you're people's dealer, aren't you? Sorry, that's the joke.
I'm the model dealer. You need an epiphany, I got one for you.
This one, instead of inflex this way, you'll get these notes. It's like you're like a Sevier of the... That's fun.
So, yeah. The deepest level of mastery is when we can actually start to be the teacher and the student at the same time. If we're not actually integrating that paradox, then we're either just an educator, where we're actually just in our head, we're just teaching the things that are boring to us, but we're not actually being a student. And when we can be the student, and we put ourselves on the coalface, and we're authentic and we're transparent, and we use the disclaimer with that to be able to say, hey, this is the thing that I'm journeying right now, then that's where the transmission part of it comes into, and that's typically what people want the most. It's not what they come in for, but that's what actually creates the most alchemy for them, because then they have permission to be able to go, oh, this person's fucking this up too. This person's failed with this too. Holy shit, I'm not alone in this. Now I can actually start to step into it. And until we can, you know, alchemize and integrate both of those things, then ultimately we just get stuck. And the majority of the coaching industry that I see online is like, you have to have a 7-figure business to work with 7-figure people. And it's just like, oh, okay, congratulations, you're using a moral frame, good job. Making sure that people, you know, keeping their integrity, but really they're not actually keeping their integrity because they're not actually starting to bring forth where they're at.
Yeah. It's interesting to me, the whole income disclosure to get, you know, income authority.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating because typically, like, the way I see it as like a lot of, like, let's take business coaches who are trying to help people go from, you know, 7 to 8 figures, and you look at the coach through the lens of, you know, well, do you have a 7-figure business?
Yep.
It's just the wrong question.
Yes.
It's just like, it's actually not the right question.
Unless you're using a fear.
I mean, you're
frame for those people.
Perhaps. I'm not sure how you would use that for that.
Yeah.
But the reason it's the wrong question to me is you want to know how many people they've helped go from 7 to 8 figures. You don't actually care whether they've got $1 or all the dollars.
Yep.
You care about how many people have they actually taken through the process to get an outcome, the outcome you're seeking. And maybe you don't even care about how many. You probably even care about, like, who were the clients And how similar are they to your circumstances? Like, how similar are these case studies to what you're going through?
Yeah.
You know, like, maybe it's like digging through their case studies and understanding, okay, I look through their 20 testimonials, this person actually looks like they have a similar business model to me. Ringing the coach and going, hey, I have a business that somewhat looks like this person's, like, tell me what their journey was like. Tell me more, you know, like, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I think that the reason we've seen the check if your coach is doing X amount of dollars thing, I think the reason we saw that is because we got taught polarity marketing. So it's throw rocks at, you know, people who don't have the other things. So you get the Hormozy dudes who throw the rocks because they got the flex, literally and fiscally in this circumstance. And he can throw the rocks because it gets attention, you know. And I think it's head smart. I think it's like smart to do that if you're Hormozy in that moment and throw rocks at, you know, those things. And I think it is just like directing more people to him generally. But I do think it's causing undue harm. And I think especially Hormozy in this instance, an example, he realized that he needs to flip that narrative if he wants school to win, which is, you know, one of his babies now. Him and Sam had a baby. No, Sam had the baby, now he's just co-parenting.
Yes. Love it. I'd love to begin to wrap up on, you know, if you were to give the listeners one of the principles from your book to take away, which one would be the one that you think would be most appropriate, that you want them to start the journey?
I'm so falling silent because I'm like, I feel, so, okay, so here's the thing. Here's what you should journey, is this. So the best outcomes I ever got from being coached, being a coach, or played any of the roles in and around the industry, is to do what needs to be done, not do what is said to need to be done. So what do I mean by this? Say, for example, you're in a coaching program and you're a coach being coached by a coach in the game of inception of coaching, whatever it is. Do what they do, not what they say. Like, if you're learning from a leader, do what they do, not what they say. Break down the actions, not the manual. Do you know what I mean? The best distinctions and wins I've always got is when I go into what's actually happening for the wins.
Yeah.
And isolating and breaking down every aspect of a win. Like, going through a win one of your clients got, and looking at it like a team of engineers and going, what happened then? Freeze frame, hold on, there's 16 details in here, zoom in. What happened there? To recreate these perfect results. And so what I'm encouraging people to do, what I think that they should do, is understand more what's actually happening that creates results versus, you know, the crazy things we say that give us pingy highs as coaches, you know, like we all feel good because we all said things and we're all clicking together and we all feel it. No, what actually happened?
Yeah.
What happened, bitches? Like, what happened?
Yeah.
And then what happened? And then what happened? And then what happened? Go like nerd engineer into that. Zoom in. What happened? You know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's zoom out. But I think the thing that people like, if they really want to be able to prepare for this world we're going into, which is a pragmatic time of beautiful optimism and a renaissance of you being able to be as creative as you want to be, to just like steamroll scarcity out of existence because you can create at like instant speed now with AI and all the things. What you want to do is you want to figure out what's happening that you want to recreate at scale. And so getting more curious about what's happening is going to unpack so much, like there's so much value in that.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd be doing.
Yeah, 100%. There's two pieces with that. I remember when I used to be in Jeff's rooms, and it was never anything that he taught me that I would take out of it. It was just like, I would just like watch him and break down every single thing that he was doing. And there was so many pieces in terms of things that he would never say or teach that I was just like, that's what I'm fucking here for. That's the tiny little piece that's missing for me. You can teach me all of the things that I've learnt 12 different times before from 12 different people, but it's that one piece that starts to create that shift of just starting to see that and going, oh, that's the thing for me.
Yeah, and you're seeing insights, not sound bites.
Yeah.
You know, there's a big difference.
Yeah, definitely. And the other piece is when most people are successful, they don't realize how they became successful because they don't actually break it down to be able to recreate it. They're just like, oh my God, look at this amazing thing. And they're like, I don't know how I did it, but it's amazing.
They had 90,000 insights over like 5 years that led up to it. Yeah.
So the ability to be able to break that down and actually start to go, okay, cool. You know, what worked? What didn't work? Let's actually create some shifts with this. Let's create that feedback loop so that we can actually start to create those shifts and evolve and actually build that flywheel so it actually progresses, so we get those compounding results rather than just fucking repeating the same thing again and again.
What was the lack of skill? What was the lack of will? What was, you know, holding me back because of fear? What was this? Like, pull it apart.
Definitely.
Get in it like a pile of Lego. Swim in all the pieces.
Swimming in Lego.
Ouch. And sometimes it's brutal pulling stuff apart. And actually, it's kind of a good metaphor because it is brutal. Like you step on that Lego, it hurts.
There's definitely been times when I've like run an event and like sales haven't gone that I wanted, and I'm just like, this one's gonna hurt. This is like it's nice when it like goes well, and you're like, oh, that worked well, that's great. And other times it's just like, this just all hurts. There's gonna be lots of feeling in this one.
You have to go back to like the event where you were like way less good in your mind, but you way better executed the pitch or the this or the that. You're like, damn it.
Love it. What's the one final piece that you would give to people if you were to give them one statement in terms of stepping into being more courageous in their leadership? What would be the one final piece to wrap up on?
If you don't enjoy the idea of being courageous about a thing you're considering, don't do it. Make that the filter.
Perfect. Great advice. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Wicked. Thanks, man.